LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the October 2nd edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I picked out 13 of the weekend's best, most newsworthy clips for what should be a really educational, fair use media criticism and political analysis show for you all tonight. As usual, my clips come mostly from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, although this week there's no CBS because Face the Nation is preempted by NFL coverage. I guess sports kind of trump politics sometimes here in the United States. You can see the 5 subtopics of the 2016 presidential election I'll be covering in the broadcast tonight down in the video description. If you're watching as a recorded show, I actually put time indexes down there so you can skip to which topics are most of interest to you. You can go back to the beginning of the topic if you want to watch it over again, which seems hard to believe, but that could happen, I suppose. I've also put a link down there to this clip list I use for the 13 clips I'm going to show you and the one still image. And if you want to follow along, you might not be able to completely understand the notes, but you should be able to figure out what the clip's about and who's speaking in each of the clips. So that's down in the video description as well. The subtopics of the presidential election I'm going to be covering: first, the fallout from the debate, a few clips on that, including Alec Baldwin's great Donald Trump impression on Saturday Night Live last night, and also Bill Maher's reaction to the debate. Then I'll get into Donald Trump's terrible, bad, horrible week, or whatever you want to call it. He lost the debate. He then went on to focus on this Miss Universe winner from the 1990s who he called too fat to be Miss Universe and totally got baited by Hillary Clinton in the debate. And then I'll move on to a little bit on Hillary Clinton's problems, which totally got drowned out by Donald Trump. Then one clip about the Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson, and this is from Real Time with Bill Maher. Sarah Silverman and Bill Maher discuss why people who supported Bernie Sanders are crazy to support Gary Johnson, the Libertarian. And then finally, I'll have this strange clip at the end of Michael Moore and Glenn Beck basically agreeing on the revolt of the working class people against the elites, and I'll talk about that at the end. But I want to start off as usual with political comedy, and the best political comedy for this week has got to be Alec Baldwin taking on the role of Donald Trump. I didn't know if it was going to work or not, but I guess having watched him play Jack Donaghy on 30 Rock, I should have known he would have been a great Donald Trump, and I think he did a great Donald Trump. And Kate McKinnon, I think, did a good job kind of skewering Hillary Clinton, although you only see a little of that in the clip I want to show you. The entire video is available free on YouTube on the Saturday Night Live channel, which I've also put a link down to in the video description. Here's a 90-second clip that I really enjoyed. Basically show Saturday Night Live proving the point that Hillary Clinton won the debate against Donald Trump over here.
My opponent's tax plan benefits the top 1% so much. It's not just trickle-down economics. It's, I don't know, I guess if I had to call it something off the top of the old dome with no prep whatsoever, I don't know. I guess I'd call it trumped-up trickle-down economics.
That's very catchy, Secretary. You just came up with that just now.
I did, right off the stiff red cuff.
Hey, jazz man, I've got a very presidential answer for this. Our jobs are fleeing this country. They're going to Mexico. They're going to China. I will stop that. If Hillary knew how, she would have done it already, period. End of story. I won the debate. I stayed calm, just like I promised, and it is over. Good night, Hofstra.
Donald, there's still 88 minutes left. It's a 90-minute debate.
My microphone is broken. She broke it with Obama. She and Obama stole my microphone. They took it to Kenya. They took my microphone to Kenya and they broke it, and now it's broken. Can you hear that? It's picking up somebody sniffing here. I think it's her sniffs. She's been sniffing all night. Testing, testing. Gina, huge Gina.
And I saw Chuck Todd on NBC's Meet the Press say in a clip I didn't take that Saturday Night Live really sets the cultural impression of what's going on in the presidential election, and they did that for Sarah Palin, obviously. And I think even for the second presidential debate in 2012, they kind of sealed the fate of Mitt Romney getting there. There's this whole like mic drop moment where Obama like sticks it to Romney in that debate. And as much as Donald Trump tries to claim he won the debate and the mic was broken and the whole thing was rigged, I think my impression when I did my live stream on Monday morning about the debate, on Tuesday morning about the Monday night debate, ended up being fairly accurate, that Donald Trump lost the debate to Hillary Clinton. By the way, I put a link down to my debate clip roundup in the video description, although I really shouldn't even be trying to promote that, because as you can see from here, you see that little orange dollar sign, and it still says under review. Because I mentioned in my video description that they argued about ISIS, that means that my video is not advertiser friendly, and it's still under review, even though I did it on Tuesday morning. And whatever, YouTube. That's why I really appreciate those of you who are my monthly patrons. There's a link down in the video description to become a patron, or several people, because that video ended up being unmonetized, and I discussed that during the video. They clicked on this little eye over here in this corner and gave me direct fan funding, which actually at least gave me minimum wage for the work I put into that debate, despite the fact that it's not been monetized by YouTube. But I wanted to point that out. And I also got a lot of comments on that debate that somehow Donald Trump won the debate based on these online polls that were not scientific. And I'll show a clip in a minute of the network news report on how Donald Trump basically lost the debate according to all the scientific polls. But first I want to show, before I get to that, and before I get to a Bill Maher clip also discussing Donald Trump's meltdown at the debate, I want to show one more clip of Kate McKinnon, who I think her Hillary Clinton impression doesn't get enough recognition, and there's some more clips that I didn't take from the cold open of the debate, where I thought Kate McKinnon did a good job of doing a Hillary Clinton impression. But also there was this Family Feud skit that's also available free on YouTube, as you can see down in the video description, where she did an impression of Kellyanne Conway, where she really I think captured the Kellyanne Conway method of answering a question that I've discussed in the last two LiberalViewer Sunday Live clip roundups, where I had Kellyanne Conway, the campaign manager for Donald Trump, on her clips as she was a guest on the Sunday morning shows. And here's Kate McKinnon doing her impression of Kellyanne Conway talking to Kenan Thompson as Steve Harvey on a parody of Family Feud here.
100 people surveyed, top 5 answers on the board. Name a reason people give for being late. Kellyanne.
Okay, well, Steve, I do not have an answer, even though I did buzz in. So I'll do what I usually do, which is talk and talk until people forget the question, and then I'm going to make an insane claim about Hillary. Hillary Clinton is North Korean.
Okay, then. Show me a bunch of lies. No, it's not up there.
So yeah, that basically describes the Kellyanne Conway way of distracting people from the fact that she is answering a question with a whole bunch of misinformation and false statements. And so it was good to see Kellyanne Conway actually make it onto Saturday Night Live as a Kate McKinnon impression. And before I leave the subject of the debates and get on to Donald Trump's terrible week this last week that included the debates, I want to show how Bill Maher reacted to Donald Trump's meltdown at the debate, and the way he then reacted to the fact that he lost the debate and couldn't quite handle it and claimed he didn't, kind of in the same way that you saw Alec Baldwin do the impression. This is Bill Maher's monologue jokes about that same situation over here.
He actually had a meltdown. Donald Trump had a meltdown about what a great temperament he has. It was like watching someone carve "I'm not a psycho" into their arm. I can't process it anymore. And even though all the polls say that Hillary won the debate, no, he won. He won. And if he didn't win, totally not his fault. The moderator asked the wrong questions. He had a bad microphone. The whole system is rigged. She had the questions beforehand. The sun was in my eyes. The Coke wore off. I mean, even Ryan Lochte was like, stop with the bullshit about being robbed. You whiny little bitch. I mean...
That's where Bill Maher fit in his hashtag whiny little bitch meme about Donald Trump. And I like the Ryan Lochte joke at the end there. And it's pretty much the same analysis you saw from Saturday Night Live, the same analysis I gave the morning after the debate, that Donald Trump may have won one or two exchanges in the first 20 or 30 minutes, but the last hour of the debate, he basically became more and more unhinged, and Hillary Clinton baited him, and then baited him into going even farther off message during the week with his attacks on Miss Universe. And I'm going to show some network news reports on how Donald Trump had a very terrible week. And they also include this breaking news overnight, the New York Times article that says that Donald Trump took almost $1 billion loss back in 1995 based on these tax documents that mysteriously appeared in the mailbox of a New York Times reporter. And based on that tax document, they can it kind of implies that, you know, Donald Trump could have gone for almost 20 years without paying income tax, up to almost $1 billion worth of taxable income he could have offset with this business loss from 1995. And here's the ABC report talking about that, and also about Donald Trump's overall bad week. And I'll kind of contrast this report to an NBC report I'm going to show in a few minutes, but here's the ABC report on Donald Trump's terrible week here.
October surprise. Breaking news from the New York Times, that banner headline. Trump tax records reveal he could have avoided paying taxes for years. The story shows Trump tax returns from 1995, and they document a jaw-dropping $916 million loss, a loss he could use to avoid paying federal taxes on $916 million in income over 18 years. And that puts this exchange from Monday's debate in a whole new light.
Maybe he doesn't want the American people, all of you watching tonight, to know that he's paid nothing in federal taxes. So
that makes me smart.
I'll tell you what, if not paying taxes makes him smart, what does that make the rest of us?
All through this campaign, Trump has said that a smart businessman pays as little taxes as possible. The New York Times report shows he could have paid nothing for years and years. The evidence, 1995 tax records showing Trump took almost $1 billion in losses from the collapse of his Atlantic City casino empire, his airline, and the purchase of New York's Plaza Hotel. Overnight, the Trump campaign responded with this statement. Mr. Trump is a highly skilled businessman who has a fiduciary responsibility to his business, his family, and his employees to pay no more tax than legally required. It did not say Trump paid federal income taxes. And Trump's team threatened legal action against the Times, saying the documents were illegally obtained. Last night in Pennsylvania, Trump took the stage as the story was breaking. No mention of taxes, a brand new assault on Hillary Clinton, mocking her recent bout with pneumonia.
And she can't make it 15 feet to her car. Give me a break. Give me a break.
And questioning her marriage.
I don't even think she's loyal to Bill. You want to know the truth. And really, folks, really, why should she be, right? Why should she be?
All this as our brand new poll shows a clear debate win for Clinton over Trump, 53-18. And Trump's unfavorable rating increased 5 points to 64%. Trump advisor Rudy Giuliani.
So you can see, at least at the end of that ABC report, they did show polls that at least scientifically show that Donald Trump lost the debate last Monday. I told you I got a lot of negative feedback when I said that Hillary Clinton won the debate based, I don't know, Donald Trump trolls or coming to my videos to just try to make people think Donald Trump won a debate that he lost, although and they were basing it on these online polls that aren't scientific. But I actually wasn't basing my decision that he lost the debate on poll results at all, but just on the fact that, you know, when I was in high school, I was in not the NFL that preempted CBS, but the National Forensics League. I actually got a bunch of forensics awards, and I then went on to law school and did mock trial and moot court, and I was a successful trial attorney, although sometimes the way I slip up pronouncing things and narrating these clips, you might not know it, but I think it actually came more from the way I had of convincing the jury I had a better command of the facts and that they could trust me more than the prosecutor, more than like having a charismatic delivery. So that was why I was a successful trial attorney, not because I'm so great at narrating clips or that I'm such a charismatic narrator. But I want to move on to the clip that from ABC where they actually had this scoop where they had the New York Times reporters on who broke the tax story. I think ABC didn't do as good a job as the NBC clip I'm going to show after this next clip, where the NBC really showed how Donald Trump went down into the dumps and basically wasted the whole week on responding to bait from Hillary Clinton in the debates. And you saw in that ABC report I just showed that George Stephanopoulos showed some of the problems with the debates and then said that Donald Trump didn't respond to the tax story and just pivoted into an attack on Hillary Clinton. And I'll show some responses to how bad those attacks on Hillary Clinton are. I mean, bad politically and unhelpful to the Trump campaign. But first I want to show this scoop that ABC had where they actually had on the reporters who broke the tax story, and they explained how they got these tax documents and how they verified them, as I will discuss after you watch that 84-second clip over here.
Two of the reporters behind the New York Times story, Suzanne Craig and David Barstow, welcome to both of you. So, Suzanne, tell us how this all began. About 10 days ago, you get a letter?
Yeah, it was a week ago last Friday, so yeah, roughly 10 days ago, and I went to my mailbox. It was Friday afternoon. I was on deadline for another story, and I swung by my mailbox. I usually do every day. And there was an envelope there from somebody from the Trump organization. And I opened it, and there was several pages of Donald Trump's tax returns in it.
Yeah, and the return address had Trump Tower. Do you have any other evidence that it actually came from Trump Tower?
That's what the return address said, and then we went sort of and started to unravel who it might have been and who could confirm it. So,
and David, that's when you went down to Florida and actually found Trump's accountant from the time?
Yeah, obviously a big concern for us is can we validate these documents? And it's a small circle of people who could potentially do that. One of them was Jack Mitnick, who served as Trump's primary tax accountant for many decades. And so I presented what had been sent to us and asked him to take a look. And he looked at them and said, yep, this looks legit, and for a variety of reasons.
And let's talk about what these documents show and what they do.
So yeah, I actually read the New York Times article, though I didn't put a link down to it in the video description. And one of the ways they verified that these several pages they were anonymously mailed were accurate is that the software that this accountant used for Donald Trump's tax returns couldn't actually show a loss as large as the $900-something billion loss. And so if you look at the actual documents, the first numbers are added in by a typewriter and don't fit the font of the rest of the number because the number's too big for the software that the accountant used back then. That's one of the ways he verified that this was an accurate Donald Trump tax return. And it's a pretty damning story, at least not so much the fact that he didn't pay taxes for, if you take a business loss, you can then defer, you can take it off your taxable income for the 3 years prior retroactively and then 15 years in the future from what I understand. So that's like 18 years of not paying taxes if he only makes $900 million worth of income during those years, and who knows how much income he made because he won't release his tax returns. And that is why this story, I think, not so much that he didn't pay taxes is damning about the story, but the fact that he had this almost $1 billion loss back in 1995. I mean, what kind of businessman can make money on casinos and loses almost $1 billion on them. That, I mean, the house always wins. I've been gambling and I occasionally win, but I know the house always wins. And apparently that wasn't true for Donald Trump's casinos in Atlantic City. You can let me know what you think about that down in the comments section. I'm going to move on now to this NBC report on Donald Trump's terrible, awful week. And it also starts with a report about the tax story, the New York Times tax story. And I will discuss how I think this NBC report is better than the ABC report I showed previously after you watch it over here.
May have just gotten a lot worse. Today's New York Times has a front page expose that Trump declared a loss of $916 million on his 1995 tax return, which means it could have allowed him to avoid paying federal income taxes on nearly $1 billion worth of income over an 18-year period. All legal, by the way. The losses came from mismanagement of 3 casinos, his airline, and the Plaza Hotel in New York. The Times received the 1995 documents in the mail anonymously with a return address of Trump Tower. And his former accountant, who's now retired, verified them. The Clinton campaign jumped on the news saying, quote, "There it is. This bombshell report reveals the colossal nature of Donald Trump's business failures." Trump's campaign told the Times that Trump has paid hundreds of millions of dollars in state, local, and federal taxes. And then Trump tweeted this morning: "I know our complex tax laws better than anyone who has ever run for president, and am the only one who can fix them." As you can see, no specific denial of anything in the Times report. This news comes at the end of a week when Trump followed an unsteady and unfocused debate performance with a parade of outbursts on Twitter, on television, and on the trail. And it all came just as he was closing the gap with Hillary Clinton.
I don't even think she's loyal to Bill. You want to know the truth. And really, folks, really, why should she be, right?
Just when he looks competitive, Trump veers off message.
That person was a Miss Universe person, and she was the worst we ever had. The worst.
Trump's inability to control his own emotions is standing between himself and the presidency.
What's happened to our jobs?
Instead of talking about jobs and trade, Clinton's email controversy, or a Middie spinning out of control, Trump spent 5 days this week attacking 1996 Miss Universe winner Alicia Muchado.
What were the names that he called you?
Miss Piggy, Miss Housekeeping, Miss Eating Machine.
She was the winner, and she gained a massive amount of weight, and it was a real problem.
When the controversy was dying down, it was Trump who kept it alive in a 3 a.m. tweet storm. Did Crooked Hillary help disgusting? Check out Sex Tape and Past. Alicia M. become a U.S. citizen so she could use her in the debate.
His latest Twitter meltdown is unhinged, even for him.
Tony Schwartz was Trump's ghostwriter for his 1987 memoir, The Art of the Deal.
He's like an untrained Rottweiler, and every time they let him off his leash, he ends up biting someone and putting himself in jeopardy.
Every scientific poll shows Trump lost Monday's debate, but Trump isn't buying it.
Where every single online poll said we won, which is great.
From very early in his life with his father, and later when his mentor became Roy Cohn, the advice was the same, which is never surrender, no matter what.
But Trump is acting as if he lost, attacking the Clintons' marital history in an interview with the New York Times, saying, quote, "She's nasty, but I can be nastier than she ever can be."
Look, he can say whatever he wants to say.
Trump supporters embrace the idea of a flawed messenger who they say will shake up Washington, but even they have become skeptical.
I wish he would talk about everything that he's going to change, and that's it, and stop all this little petty stuff, you know. A beauty queen from how many years ago?
20.
Really?
Even Trump's surrogates say Trump will lose if he does not rein himself in.
This last week, I think, has been, frankly, a lost week, a week which has hurt him, which has shaken his own supporters. And you can't tweet at 3 o'clock in the morning, period. There's no excuse ever, not if you're going to be president of the United States.
Joining me now is the former...
So even Newt Gingrich is right every now and then, and I think his analysis of Donald Trump's week was correct there. And like I said, I think NBC's Meet the Press did a better job than the ABC This Week clip did on showing that Donald Trump had a really terrible, horrible, bad week, or whatever you want to call it. And Although, of course, ABC, I think, did a better job of getting on the actual New York Times reporters to explain how they got the information that started this whole tax problem. And the next clip I want to show on the whole tax situation is from Rudy Giuliani. And I actually didn't even want to take any Rudy Giuliani clips because, you know, he doesn't have any actual governmental position. He's a Trump surrogate, I guess, but he is, you know, I hate most of what I hear him say, especially about policing, and I'm not going to even take the time to contradict some of the things he said about stop and frisk, but he said something so ridiculous about Donald Trump's failure to pay taxes, or his using the law to avoid paying taxes. And by the way, I was reading your live comments along the way, and I wanted to point out that something that John Capone said in the live comments during the last clip wasn't quite accurate as to what the New York Times story says. Tax cheat Don. If you read the New York Times story, there's nothing about him actually breaking the law. It's not tax evasion. It's more like tax avoidance. It's using the tax laws, the loopholes, to avoid paying taxes. And when Chuck Todd actually confronted Rudy Giuliani with how unfair that is, Rudy Giuliani tried to claim that, oh yeah, poor people use tax loopholes too. And that's what's so ridiculous. The loophole he's talking about that poor people use to avoid paying taxes is the fact that they're poor, I guess, as I will discuss after you watch that clip over here.
You think it's a good example to basically being able to avoid paying federal taxes, to take advantage of loopholes where somebody wealthy can avoid paying actual federal taxes. I understand that it's legal, and we're debating whether it should be. But is this the right thing we should have in a president?
Well, first of all, a lot of the people that are poor take advantage of loopholes and pay no taxes. Those are loopholes also, and they pay no taxes. And also, no matter who you are, if you have a $30 operating loss, you can carry it forward to the next year. And poor people do take advantage of that also. Now, do I think the tax code should be simplified? Absolutely. Will he do away with things like this? He probably is better positioned than anyone to figure out how to do away with it because he understands the tax code better than anyone else. I'd rather have a genius who understands the tax code, that wants to reform it. He's the one who's against giving hedge fund guys the big break they get and paying only 15% tax. So you got to figure out who you're working for. There he was working for private interests. He has to take advantage of those rules, no wrongdoing. If he could have these kinds of results for us in America, we wouldn't be having 1.5% recovery. We'd be having 5% recovery. Plus, he did pay hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes, state taxes,
well, we don't know this
taxes,
until
excise taxes.
How do we know this without him releasing his tax return?
Because if he didn't, he'd be in jail. That's why. Because he'd be sitting behind bars if he didn't pay taxes, if he didn't pay sales tax, if he didn't pay excise tax, if he didn't pay property tax.
I understand that, but we don't know how much. We don't know how much it was. We only can take your word for it.
All you have to do is look at his 104-page financial disclosure form. Look at the property that he has. Figure out what the tax rate is in that community. You can figure out what he paid. And since they didn't put him in jail, I can guarantee you he paid it.
Before I let you go, what did you...
Now, my criticism of Chuck Todd in that exchange is the follow-up question where he was trying to confront Rudy Giuliani there was on, you know, how do we know how much he paid in other taxes if he didn't pay federal income tax? He didn't follow up at all on the fact that he said that poor people use loopholes to avoid taxes when the actual loophole is that they're poor, and that poor people also take the offset of business law, you know, the operating business loss offset. That's very common for poor people to take a $30 business loss to avoid paying taxes, just like Donald Trump took almost $1 billion business loss as an offset for his income. I mean, that was pretty ridiculous, and I'm kind of surprised that Chuck Todd did not follow up on that, if he was going to follow up on that answer at all. But before I leave the topic of Donald Trump's terrible bad week, I want to show one more Rudy Giuliani clip. This is where I think Jake Tapper over on CNN State of the Union did a better job of following up. You'll notice he starts this clip by saying that those Donald Trump attacks you saw earlier in the NBC Meet the Press clip about, or I'm sorry, on the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos clip, where he didn't really respond to the tax story, but he did start these new attacks on Hillary Clinton and on being, her participation in the marriage with Bill Clinton that includes infidelities. And that's the topic that Jake Tapper asked Rudy Giuliani about the clip where he claimed that Hillary Clinton wasn't loyal to Bill Clinton with no evidence, and he calls it like a wild accusation, an unhinged accusation, and you'll see he keeps following up, and he seems to actually get somewhat emotional about it, talking to Rudy Giuliani on CNN's State of the Union this morning over here.
Last question for you. Donald Trump launched a wild and unsubstantiated attack against Hillary Clinton last night. Take a listen.
I don't even think she's loyal to Bill. You want to know the truth? And really, folks, really, why should she be, right?
Mr. Mayor, is that normal, stable behavior for a presidential nominee to launch an unsubstantiated attack?
After she called him a racist, a misogynist, a xenophobic, I don't know, schizophrenic, and I don't know what else she called him at the end of that debate, I think it's fair. It's fair game.
Just to make stuff up, just at wild accusations. Hillary Clinton's cheating on Bill. No proof of it whatsoever. Everything's fair game.
That was a sarcastic remark pointing out that Bill Clinton has, quite a past, and Hillary Clinton has done quite a job on attacking the people who were victims of Bill Clinton. And not only that, she poses as a feminist, and she's taken money from countries that stone women, kill women,
Bill
women.
Bill Clinton's not the nominee, sir. Bill Clinton's not the nominee. And this is my last question for you. Is the Trump campaign, is Donald Trump and the people around Donald Trump really the ones to be casting aspersions on the marriages of anyone else?
It isn't a marriage. It isn't the marriage. It's the way she goes on the attack and tries to hurt victims of sexual predations. I mean, she is the one who says that victims should be taken seriously.
That wasn't about her marriage? Him saying that she's not loyal to Bill isn't about her marriage?
I am saying the problem with Hillary Clinton has nothing to do, as far as I'm concerned, with her marriage. It's her protection of Bill Clinton for 20 or 25 years against allegations of rape, taking advantage of an intern, and going on the attack and trying to make those women appear to be insane in some cases. Also, it's her posing as a feminist and taking millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars from countries that kill women, stone women, don't allow women to drive, don't allow women to have rights, and treat women as property.
I mean, I just find it hard to believe that Mr. Trump would want to start leveling accusations about people's marriages, but that's all the time we have, Mr. Mayor.
I think the accusations are about Hillary Clinton taking money from countries
The accusation
that kill
was
women.
that Hillary Clinton was cheating on Bill. That's what the accusation was. It was an unhinged and wild accusation. I can understand why you can't defend it, because it's indefensible. Mayor Giuliani, thank you so much.
That's your opinion, and thank you for allowing me to reply to that.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Coming up, Saturday Night Live.
So that was kind of an exasperated Jake Tapper there at the end, kind of ending that last question with the way he started it, although it didn't really end up being his last question because there were some follow-ups there about whether Rudy Giuliani and the rest are the best people to attack someone else for their marriages, given that Rudy Giuliani has multiple marriages, Donald Trump has multiple marriages, and that was actually something that was brought up over on Meet the Press, and I didn't take that clip. Those two clips of Rudy Giuliani are kind of representative of him appearing. Was he on 3 of the 4 shows or all 4 shows? I can't recall, but he was pretty much ubiquitous on the Sunday morning shows this morning, and I cut it down to those 2 clips that I wanted to show you. And so that was the last clip on Donald Trump's terrible bad week, and now I have a couple clips on the Hillary Clinton side here, and this first clip is kind of the mirror image of that last clip. It's over on Fox News Sunday, where Chris Wallace is trying to move forward this argument that Hillary Clinton was an enabler of Bill Clinton's affairs, and that Hillary Clinton attacked women on his behalf, and he used that as a line of questioning against Hillary Clinton's surrogate and Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill. And I think she did a much better job than Rudy Giuliani explaining the other side of the argument here, which I will discuss after you watch that 3-minute clip from Fox News Sunday this morning over here.
Appropriate or not. I think his point with regard to the sex scandals isn't what Bill Clinton did. It's more what Hillary Clinton did and whether she really is a champion of women, because the fact is, over the course of these years, she has gone after a number of women about allegations that turned out to be true. Let me put a few cases up. She called Monica Lewinsky a narcissistic Looney Tune. She said Jennifer Flowers was a gold digger. Here she is.
You're some failed cabaret singer who doesn't even have much of a resume to fall back on.
And last year, Hillary Clinton at one point said that people who say that they have been raped deserve to be believed. But then she was asked about Juanita Broaddrick, who in 1978 said that she was raped by Bill Clinton.
I would say that everybody should be believed at first until they are disbelieved based on evidence.
Fact is, Senator, Hillary Clinton does have a long record of going after her husband's accusers, at least some of whom were later vindicated.
You know, Hillary Clinton may have defended her husband in various situations, but if we want to compare what she has done for women in her life, how she has worked, I mean, when the cameras weren't rolling, when no one was looking, after a law degree from one of the best schools in the country, she went to work for the Children's Defense Fund. She has said women's rights are human rights when she was First Lady, famously. She has lived a life of championing women's rights. A sponsor of equal pay legislation in the Senate. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is telling hostesses at his golf clubs that they are, telling the people they get them off the hostess decks, they're too fat. I mean, this is really not even a close comparison as who's championed women's rights in their life and who has not.
Even you waded into this subject back in 2006. Here's what you said then about President Clinton.
I have a lot of problems with some of his personal issues. I said at the time, I think he's been a great leader, but I don't want my daughter near him.
Senator, if it was okay for you to discuss then, why is it off limits for Donald Trump?
It wasn't okay for me. I regretted it the minute it came out of my mouth. It was mean, it was unnecessary, and I apologized immediately. That is something Donald Trump doesn't know how to do. If only he would show some humility and the kind of character traits that we need in a president, emotional stability, the ability to be introspective and listen to others. I regret those things, and I apologize for saying that. I don't think we've ever heard Donald Trump say he's sorry for anything.
All right, well, let's turn.
So that's Claire McCaskill, I think, making the argument that the latest Trump attack on Hillary Clinton is ridiculous, and that even those quotes that Chris Wallace did, I think, the best job you possibly could of trying to show how Hillary Clinton was an enabler, that they are really just instances of her defending her own husband politically and being loyal to her husband, which is kind of contradicts the whole Donald Trump claim that she wasn't loyal, and that it doesn't really diminish how she's fought for women's rights her whole career compared to Donald Trump and what he's done, which is, I mean, there are some instances of him helping the careers of women, but there are all these other instances of him being misogynist, and he went to his Palos Verdes golf club and fired the waitresses or the wait staff that he thought weren't attractive enough to work in one of his golf clubs. And now, of course, the whole fat shaming of Miss Universe and even slut shaming with the sex tape. So I think Claire McCaskill did a much better job than Rudy Giuliani. And before I leave the topic of Hillary Clinton's side of the 2016 presidential campaign, I wanted to show a clip of Senator Bernie Sanders over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, responding to some leaked audio, some secret audio that came out this week of Hillary Clinton back in February, kind of disparaging Bernie Sanders and his supporters. And this is Bernie Sanders saying that he actually agrees with Hillary Clinton's analysis, and then it actually goes over into some follow-ups from George Stephanopoulos about why Bernie Sanders voters should not vote for Gary Johnson or any third-party candidates. And that's the topic I want to discuss after you watch that clip over here.
Targeting comments she made at a closed-door fundraiser back in February. I want to play them and then get your response. Here you go. She's talking about your supporters.
They're children of the Great Recession, and they are living in their parents' basement. And so if you're feeling that you're consigned to, being a barista or, some other job that doesn't pay a lot and doesn't have much of a ladder of opportunity attached to it, then the idea that maybe, just maybe, you could be part of a political revolution is pretty appealing.
Here's what Donald Trump tweeted about that. He said, Crooked H is nasty to Sanders supporters behind closed doors, owned by Wall Street and politicians. HRC is not with you, making a direct pitch to your supporters. How did you take it?
I took it exactly the opposite way. I think what she said, and by the way, during a campaign, we do have our differences. Secretary Clinton and I do disagree on issues. But what she was saying there is absolutely correct. And that is, you got millions of young people, many of whom took out loans in order to go to college, hoping to go out and get decent paying, good jobs. And you know what? They're unable to do that. And yes, they do want a political revolution. They want to transform the society. They want to make sure that when they get out of school, they can get a job that pays them wages and salaries commensurate with the education they have. I think that's a very important point. And that is an issue that as a nation we have got to address. How do we create good paying jobs for people who have a decent education? And one of the issues that Clinton is talking about is rebuilding our infrastructure, pay equity for women, raising the minimum wage to a living wage. So in fact, we can have decent paying jobs for all of our people.
A lot of your former supporters who say they want a political revolution are still holding back from Hillary Clinton. What do you say to them?
This is what I say, George. Look, we live in a tough world. This country faces enormous crises, as we do as a planet. And I would like people simply, I'm not going to tell people how to vote, take a look at issue by issue. For example, climate change. A lot of young people are appropriately very concerned about climate change and what happens to our planet if we do not transform our energy system. Compare what Donald Trump says to what Hillary Clinton says. Donald Trump is ignoring science. Trump thinks that climate change is a hoax. Clinton has a serious plan in order to transform our energy system. Raising the minimum wage. Most Americans understand that a $7.25 minimum wage is a starvation wage. It's got to be raised to a living wage. That is what Secretary Clinton wants to do. I just spoke to her a few days ago. In the first 100 days of her administration, if she's elected, she intends to lay out a plan on climate change, lay out a plan on how we overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, which allows billionaires like the Koch brothers or Sheldon Adelson to buy elections. She wants to bring forth pay equity for women. So I think if you look at Clinton versus Trump, issue
But Senator,
after
I think
issue,
what the problem is that a lot of your supporters aren't necessarily looking at Clinton versus Trump. They're looking at Clinton versus Gary Johnson, Clinton versus Jill Stein, maybe thinking about staying home. Do you agree with President Obama and the First Lady who said this week, a vote for anyone else but Hillary Clinton is a vote for Donald Trump?
Well, this is what I think. I think is that the evidence is overwhelming that the next president of the United States is going to be Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. I think if you're voting for somebody else, in a sense, and not supporting Clinton because she doesn't live up to all of your specifications or all of your ideas, I think in a sense it is a vote for Trump. And I think also take a look at Gary Johnson's record on the environment, on the economy. It is a very conservative approach, something that I think most of my supporters do not support.
Senator Sanders, thanks very much for joining us.
So that's Senator Bernie Sanders himself explaining to Bernie Sanders supporters like me, as I've mentioned in many previous editions of this live clip roundup, I voted for Bernie Sanders here in California. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter, but now I'm going to put my support to Hillary Clinton, even though I think I'm actually going to vote for her here in California, even though it's not even a battleground state, just because I think it's important to show that support in the popular vote over Donald Trump for all the reasons that Senator Bernie Sanders himself explained in that last clip. If you're a former Bernie Sanders supporter like me, you can disagree with me down in the comment section if you want to. I notice I have just about 300 live viewers here, and I'm reading your comments. They're going by really fast, but I appreciate all of you who are participating in the live broadcast and helping me increase or look at different points of view on the analysis. But so that was the last clip I actually wanted to show on the Hillary Clinton side of the 2016 presidential campaign. It was only a couple clips, very brief compared to the way Donald Trump took over the media and the coverage as usual this week to have his bad, terrible week. But I wanted to follow up that criticism from Bernie Sanders of millennials who are throwing their support to Libertarian Gary Johnson with this interesting discussion over on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, where Bill Maher and also former Bernie Sanders supporter Sarah Silverman discussed why they think it's also ridiculous for former Bernie Sanders supporters and millennials to support Libertarian Gary Johnson. And Bill Maher also throws in some clips of some of the gaffes that Gary Johnson's made in the last week or two. And I'll discuss all that after you watch that clip over here.
That's why I don't understand these Bernie or bust people, you know? I don't know what their long game is. I don't know what their perfect dream scenario is. I earnestly am asking, or am I being obtuse?
No, you are
But
not.
it seems that it would be good to have an ally in office.
And you are the perfect one to talk to them, because, what are you, 28, 29 now? You're
almost.
Yeah.
I fucking hate that that's a big, funny joke.
You're a millennial, and one with stamina. Now, let me read the polls here on Clinton, 18 to 34 people. Clinton, 31%.
Uh-huh.
Trump, 26. Gary Johnson, 29%. Gary Johnson.
Gary Johnson.
Gary Johnson.
Listen.
Is a fucking idiot.
I feel like he's a fucking idiot.
I like him, he's a nice guy, but he's another in my basket of fucking idiots.
Listen, I voted, and I believe you did in 2000 for Ralph Nader.
Yes.
But this is not
But he
that
wasn't
kind
an
of
idiot.
time.
Right,
No,
and
he wasn't an idiot, but he also wasn't
No,
going to win.
and it was a
We wanted
mistake.
to vote our conscience.
And I admitted it, yes.
It was a mistake.
Okay, but Gary Johnson, can I show you we put a little montage of Gary Johnson together, just to remind, and we thought he was a cool guy. You know, he smokes pot, he was for pot. He's not making pot look good.
Pot doesn't make you cool.
Right.
Pot is cool.
Pot is cool,
but it doesn't make
you know what's also cool? Reading.
Yeah.
Here's a little bit of Gary Johnson for those thinking of voting for him.
Aleppo. And what is Aleppo?
Aleppo, not knowing that there's a city in between the two forces.
Who's your favorite foreign leader? Who's my favorite? Anybody. Pick any leader. I'm having a brain. Well, name anybody.
I think I could stand up there for the whole debate.
So weird.
Really? And by the way, for the people, 29%, 18 to 34, who I assume a lot of them were Bernie people, right? Okay, here's some minimum wage. Hillary's with Bernie, not Gary Johnson. Right. Believes in no minimum wage. TPP, he's for that. Hillary and Bernie are against it. Citizens United. All the money you want in politics. Gun control, wants none of that. Financial regulation, universal health care. He's for repealing Obamacare. Free college, he's against that. He's for nothing that you fucking people want.
It's not even like, no one's even misinforming them about him. Like they are, with your friend. You know, it's like people what
Yeah, no, that's true.
What you were saying was exactly right. People vote because they're totally misinformed, and that is a real thing. You know, there's something called Brexit that people voted for totally against their best.
Brexit. You were against Brexit?
Are you serious?
Right. It's self-government. Why were you?
What are you talking about? They promised. They had huge signs on the sides of buses that said, $325 million go to the EU that could be going to our health care. They had no intention and said they had no intention once Brexit was voted through. Then people are Googling what Brexit is after they voted in.
Gary Johnson.
Hey, pundit.
Wow, that's really passionate.
Yes,
don't show my neck. My neck goes crazy when I have passion.
You know what?
I'm a big fan of Sarah Silverman, and I enjoyed her appearance on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, and I definitely agree with what she said, and especially with what Bill Maher said there. And I have a history of disagreeing with Bill Maher, even though I'm also a fan of Bill Maher. But I think the way he showed that it's crazy if you supported Bernie Sanders to now support Gary Johnson, because on a whole host of issues, the Libertarian Gary Johnson is opposed to what Bernie Sanders, climate change and the Citizens United. I actually side with Gary Johnson on Citizens United almost, although I actually believe in public financing of campaigns, which isn't something libertarians believe in. But anyway, for those people who are Bernie Sanders supporters who may be throwing their support to Gary Johnson, the Libertarian, I wanted to include that clip. That's, I think, an important argument, actually a winning argument, but you can disagree with me if you want to let me know down in the comment section. And so that's only the single clip I wanted to show on that issue. And I have a couple clips now on this last issue I wanted to show to my viewers before I complete the program tonight. And that's this issue of the revolt against the elites that, Bernie Sanders kind of represented that on the Democratic side, and Donald Trump still represents that. And he, that's kind of what may make him a winner in this campaign still. I still think he has a chance to win because he's the anti-establishment candidate. He's like a throw a wrench into the whole system type of candidate. And that was actually the message of both Michael Moore and Glenn Beck over on NBC's Meet the Press this morning, where, they both agreed. And, some people say that the political spectrum, the left and the right, that it's not actually a straight line. It kind of becomes a circle, that when you get all the way to the left and all the way to the right, they kind of become one and the same. And it's kind of strange. I noticed when Glenn Beck and Michael Moore were being previewed on Meet the Press this morning. Here's the screenshot from that. Do you notice, except for the hair, Michael Moore and Glenn Beck kind of look alike? They're like twins separated at birth? I don't know. That's not really true, but I guess at this point in their lives, they kind of both look a little bit similar there. Is it just me? You can let me know what you think. But they actually had a similar opinion about what's going on in the election this year. I'll start with what Michael Moore said, talking about how he's worried that Donald Trump could still win, and I agree with his analysis, as I will discuss after you watch it from NBC's Meet the Press this morning over here.
It was something you wrote a few months ago. You believe Donald Trump is going to win this election. You believed it before the convention, and you wrote this. From Green Bay to Pittsburgh is the middle of England, broken and depressed, struggling, the smokestacks strewn across the countryside with the carcass of what we used to call the middle class, angry, embittered, working and non-working people who were lied to by the trickle-down of Reagan and abandoned by Democrats. And I know after the debate, you were unlike many. You thought Trump was successful in what he needed to do. Explain.
Yes, I don't want him to win. Let's just make that clear. I've been trying to say for months here, I live in Michigan, and across the Midwest, across the Rust Belt, I understand why a lot of people are angry, and they see Donald Trump as their human Molotov cocktail that they get to go into the voting booth on November 8th and throw him into a political system that has made their lives miserable. And so I think at the convention, I was worried Democrats, the Clinton campaign, were all doing an end zone dance when they were only on the 50-yard line. And this celebrating after the debate, everybody needs to have their game face on here and realize that Trump can win. He can pull this off, and everybody has to be at full force here. Otherwise, it has a chance of happening. And I've lived long enough to know where I've seen, I've never thought a B actor whose co-star was a chimpanzee would ever be president of the United States, or George W. Bush, who was just completely not there himself, that he could ever get elected. Well, I take this seriously now, so I don't just, Trump is not just comedy to me. I think that people see that he is maybe their messenger, even though they don't necessarily like him or agree with him so much. I think that they love the idea of blowing up the system.
Do you think every time a newspaper editorial comes out?
So that's Michael Moore warning that Donald Trump could still win. And by the way, if you go look at my my debate clip roundup there, where you can see it's still not monetized, so I shouldn't really be promoting it. But if you look at the last clip where I show Donald Trump talking to Sean Hannity, and I think he sticks to the message that could really win him the election, basically the message that Michael Moore is talking about there, blow up the system. Hillary Clinton has been in the system for 30 years or 26 years, and she's not going to get your results. Vote for me. I'm going to change. I'm the real agent of change. That's the message from Donald Trump that I think is really going to work. And it wasn't only Michael Moore who thinks that there's a real vote against the establishment. It was also a person who I think is much more out of the mainstream than Michael Moore, though he doesn't seem to think so. And I will discuss what Glenn Beck says in that same segment, talking to Chuck Todd on NBC's Meet the Press over here for the last clip of the broadcast tonight.
I can't actually bring myself to say that your last guess was right, only because then there will be a YouTube clip of me saying that, and it will be used against me.
By the way, I think Mr. Moore probably doesn't want to, is worried about the same thing for him, right? Yeah.
Right, but there is, he has diagnosed the problem in the country. Nobody feels like they're listening. We're shouting over each other, and everything. I mean, I was watching the first 20 minutes of the show. Gee, who would have guessed those guests would have said those things? Everybody feels like there's a play going on, and we're just watching it and looking at each other and shaking our heads in disbelief. And nobody's listening to the hardworking American who doesn't feel like they belong to anything anymore. In fact, it's almost as if we're standing outside and we're not being invited to this party at all. And it's going to backfire. And it's interesting that you would have Michael Moore and me both on the same show talking about this, because I think there's a lot of people that would claim that Michael Moore and Glenn Beck are responsible for a lot of this. When I can't speak for Michael, because I honestly don't watch much of what he does, and I'm sure he doesn't with me, but I warned about this. When they were mocking me for bringing up Nazis, the reason why I did many of the times was to warn about the rise of the uber right in Europe that would bleed into America, and it's happening. We have to change our course, and we have to change our course as individuals now.
You and I were...
So when Michael Moore and Glenn Beck are agreeing on something, I think that's at least a point worth considering. And I was also happy to see Glenn Beck in that last part of the clip there, kind of admitting that Nazism comes from the uber right, because I always thought that people like Glenn Beck believed that fascism and Nazism was actually leftist. It's the National Socialist Workers' Party or whatever, and so they're actually left-wing. The Nazis weren't actually right-wing, so I'm glad to see at least one conspiracy right-wing Alex Jones type person admit that the Nazis were on the right and not on the left, and that they're coming from the ultra-right in Europe. I agree more with Michael Moore than Glenn Beck, of course, but I thought that was an important exchange to show you all, and that's the last clip of the broadcast. I just wanted to point out for the people who I've been promising that I'm going to do a book review of Who Cooked Adam Smith's Dinner. I had some problems this week I ended up broken down on the side of the freeway with car trouble, and that took up some extra time, and there were some ACLU things that took up my time this week, but this last week. But this coming week will actually be the week I will be putting out a draft video to my patrons. Economics, is it anti-feminist, or is economics anti-feminist ? A book review of Who Cooked Adam Smith's Dinner, and I'll be putting out a message to my patrons in the next 24 hours showing some of the videos where I'll be taking those clips, and then there'll be a draft video available to my patrons for at least several days before I put out the final completed video later in October. This last week I did the debate clip roundup. Next week, the next presidential debate, I don't think I'll do a clip roundup of the vice presidential debate unless it's exceptionally interesting, but the next presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump is actually next Sunday, so I'm hoping to get the Sunday clip roundup done before the debate and then do an additional debate clip roundup, which hopefully will get monetized if they don't talk about ISIS and Muslims too much, I guess. If you want to help me keep making videos, whatever YouTube does to my advertiser-friendly or not advertiser-friendly videos, or whatever, you can give me a direct patron fan fund, or a direct fan funding contribution by clicking in the little eye over here, or down in the video description there's a link to my Patreon page. I will, like I said, be trying to do a video clip roundup next Sunday before the presidential debate, maybe around 3 p.m. Pacific time. And also I'll be putting out that draft video on economics. And until then, I guess I'll be seeing all of you around the internet.